Welcome back to another episode of the Soundworks Collection video series. This week, I'm so excited to chat with composer Jack Wall. I've had a chance to chat with Jack a few times over the past few years on various projects. You might know him from a few of his incredible projects and relationships with the Myst series, with Mass Effect, with Call of Duty. Today, we're going to be talking about Coldware, the newest release from Treyarch, and I'm so excited to have Jack Wall on the show today. Hey, Jack.
Hey, how you doing, Mike?
So, my gosh, congratulations on this new chapter. I feel like one more Call of Duty in your belt, notch on your belt. Every time I feel like, just having the opportunity to work on one of these would be enough. But it seems like you can't get enough of the Call of Duty franchise, and they can't get enough of you, rightly so, because your work is amazing.
They keep asking me, I'm going to keep doing it, so why not?
So I think last time I saw you was maybe September of last year. Even a year ago, how deep were you into this project? Like, what's the timeline for this one?
Yeah, this one was kind of an albatross in a way. It was just out of nowhere because I think Sledgehammer Games was working on something. They had a shakeup at the company, and suddenly Treyarch was asked to go ahead and produce it a year ahead of schedule. They were planning to do this game for next year's schedule, right? Because, they have 3 different studios making this game. So suddenly I got a call in November, I think, of last year. It was about a year ago. And said, hey, guess what? We're doing a game right now, and it's due next year. So let's go. And I was like, okay. Of course, how high should I jump for you right now?
So at that point, how much did they have to show you even at that point?
Well, at that point, nothing, honestly, because they had just gotten this. They had just gotten this, this mandate that they had to put this game out. But they did take, what Sledgehammer had worked on, and they were just going to reskin it for a Black Ops, this new story that they were going to apply to that. What the work that had been done. So I think that's how it went. I don't think I really started working in earnest until maybe February. That's when I started seeing things and started to score things. And we finished up, we recorded the last bits in the beginning of September.
Amazing.
So we recorded in June and then again in September, and it was a pretty good pace. I mean, we did about 2.5 hours of music for this thing, and most of it's on the soundtrack. So, for the single player. It was quite an adventure. It always is. It's always fun. It's always like, and this one was like really, really unique in that the story was so tight and sort of succinct. It had a. Usually when I work on a Black Ops game, it's like you're all over the world. Many different things are happening in the story, and it's really kind of hard to follow because of that, and explain it. This is a very linear kind of experience, and the single player is not super long either. So we were able to almost score it just like you would a movie in a way. I would just get a level playthrough that was video captured, and I could like literally just go through it and score it, and it was fun.
Is that easier for you, knowing that it's somewhat a little more locked or more in place? There's not going to be so much kind of figuring out later creatively?
When the story is really cohesive and easy to follow, the characters are really easy to call out. You can write themes for them. You can follow them through the story. It keeps returning. There's a small group of people, like there always is with Black Ops, because it's Black Ops, but and some returning characters. But it was a real joy because Cold War is like, I don't want to give away my age or anything, but I kind of grew up in the 80s, so there was like, I kind of had an interest historically in that period. So it was sort of fun to, the idea of working with a Russian choir was like, you got to do it. And even in COVID times, like, people can't get together and sing. It's really, really super dangerous. So we had to figure that out. We had my very, very good friend, Ayana Haviv, who is my choir maestra. She and I talked about it, and it was like, okay, she said I got 32 people ready to go who can record themselves by themselves in their own house or in their own office or wherever their studio. Whatever they had, they had the ability to record high quality audio with a good microphone and mic pre's and the whole thing. And
Wow.
they all recorded by themselves in their own place. And it sounds phenomenal. Like it
Yeah.
came out great. Yeah.
Yeah. So early on, did you know that was gonna be one of the kind of the paintbrushes you were gonna work with, which is the choir? It seems like you dabble it throughout the score, and it like you hear the choir and it Cold War. Like there's no denying the feeling it establishes. But what other types of things? I mean, there's a few other instruments I want to definitely talk to you about in the synth world, but when it came to like the War theme, what other like things did you want to try to lean into?
Here's the crazy thing. We didn't know definitively
Mhm.
that this game was called Cold War until maybe March, April.
Wow.
So yeah, it was kind
Wow.
of a late breaking, like, oh, okay, now we can
Yeah.
like jump into the whole Russian thing.
Okay.
We knew there was Russian stuff, but like the fact it
Yeah.
was Cold War just gave us like material to work with. Just like,
Yeah.
oh, this is the story, and it was just so easy to see it at that point. It was like, I gotta have, because the whole time I'm thinking, if I don't have to use choir, I probably shouldn't, right?
Hmm.
Because COVID and all that.
Yeah.
But once they said it's Cold War, I mean we sort of let that, they were playing with that for a long time, but once they nailed it, yes, it's going to be called Cold War. It was like, oh, well, I got to have a choir now, you know.
So
That's
I
what's
mean, for
happening.
when it comes to choir, I mean, you've had like or I guess the question is, do you feel like you have a sense of how you like to orchestrate your choirs? Because like in this case, you worked with for the main theme, you worked with this lyricist Cindy Shapiro for the lyrics, because there's aspects of it that, I mean, it's all in Russian, which is one thing I don't think they're expecting you to nail down. But when it comes to choir, what do you appreciate about just like your collaboration with that, and kind of like how aware are you of the choir world when it comes to writing for them?
Okay, couple things I should get out of the way here.
Hmm.
So I'm in Portugal right now in a
Yep.
hotel room. That's what's behind me.
Yep.
Just this is the best look of this room. And Cindy Shapiro is my wife, and
Yep.
she's sitting right over there,
Yay,
right
Cindy.
over there, and she's recording audio for me right now. Yeah, so Cindy's a great composer in her own right. She does theater and stuff like that, and so I think back in, I don't even remember if it was Black Ops 2 or 3, but we started working together on any time they needed a song. Because, lyrics are not my specialty. I can write
Yeah.
lyrics. I just can't write good lyrics. So, so I wanted to get Cindy involved whenever lyrics had to be written, because she's just got the brain for it, and she's just wonderful at it. So when I actually wrote the lyrics to Belle's theme,
Hmm.
which is myself in English, and then we had them translated by this woman, Nino Sanakidze, who works for the LA Opera, and she is a Russian national. She grew up in Russia, speaks fluent Russian, and she translated all of my English lyrics into Russian, and then transliterated them, and then we took those transliterations and set them to music, and then there was this whole process of going back and forth with Ayana Haviv to make sure that the pronunciation was correct. She would do a guide track, and then she would have each part do their own guide track, a single voice, and then we would send those. Once we had those approved by Nino for pronunciation, then they would get sent out to all the other singers, and they would be instructed just to sing to one track, so it didn't become a game of telephone where everyone, it starts out one way and it ends up sounding a whole different way. It was very complex choir situation where, honestly, when I'm working with these people, they're the best singers in the world, I can write the choir, put it, we can work out like all that stuff pretty easily ahead of time, and then go into a session and record in 4 hours at the most. Wow. Right? In one quick session. This whole process was like maybe 2 weeks to get done. So that was complicated. And then when it came to Treyarch did not have a specific direction yet when I did that. That was back in May and June. When we got into sessions that were going to happen in September, we didn't really have an opening interface locked for the game. So where the menu screens happen and then you can choose what mode of gameplay you're going to play. So they said, okay, we just need like a 40-second piece of looping music for this opening thing we're going to have, and it's just going to continually loop until the player hits something. And I said, okay, so I wrote that first bit of Cold War that you hear. It's like maybe the first 40 seconds was what was looping. And then they came back and they said, we love this, but we're going to change the interface again. And we would like a 3+ minute piece so that we can just play that all the way through the end. And then when that ends, you'll play one of the themes for multiplayer or any of the other modes, zombies, whatever. So, so then when I realized what it was going to be and it was going to be able to shine a little bit, I decided to write a full theme based on some stuff I actually did in the KGB level that I thought was really kind of endemic to what this piece should be. So I wrote the theme for Cold War. And for the lyrics this time, I was like, okay, I really want these to be good. Not that the Bells theme isn't good. It's just that like I knew Cindy would do her homework. And I said, can you write some lyrics about the Cold War? I want something that really speaks and is really true to what the Russian experience was and also the English, the American experience was of the perceptions of what that Cold War was really like. And she did all kinds of research. She went to Rand Corporation, which is like the international, library of all things international. So she was able to find some things like CIA, declassified CIA documents about the Cold War. And then when she handed in her lyric to Nino was like, oh my God, you totally nailed this, right? You got the Russian, perspective on the Cold War is wonderful. And then when I published on my website the lyrics in Russian, Cyrillic, and then transliterations, and then the English, I had a couple of Russian people tweet me and say, this is pretty cool. Like most times when an American writes, Russian, it's what we call, I think he called it cranberry or something. I was like, what's cranberry? I was like, what's cranberry? And he said, well, cranberry is like, it's all stereotypes of what Russian people are.
Right.
Like, they drink vodka and, it's really cold in Siberia, that kind of stuff. So, but, this is pretty close to, he said, the singers don't sound exactly Russian. They sound like English people doing Russian, but the pronunciations are pretty good. So,
oh wow!
So I felt I took that as a win.
Kudos. Well, that's good. I mean, that just seems like the tip of the iceberg for that seems like a really fun moment for you of getting in and kind of getting into the weeds of the mindset of Cold War. But then you have the task of like covering the rest of the game, which is just, it seems, I listen through the soundtrack and it's just like, the layering and the arrangements and just the process and thought that you have to put into your work, it just seems, do you, like you're saying with the limited time, do you appreciate like having a kind of like a clock ticking looming deadline because like your work is gonna like you just kind of resort to kind of like muscle memory of like being a composer? Like what's the combination of when you have the task ahead of covering a game with this much material?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't really have a great perspective on that because I'm usually the one in it doing the work. And but I would say this. What Treyarch gives me is inspiration enough. I mean, it's all there in the visual, Yep. It inspires me to, like, it almost writes itself in a way when you see it. It's like you kind of know what it should be right away. Like as soon as I see it, I know. Like it's just always been that way. And I worked in television quite a bit, so in television, I got to write 35 minutes, between 20 and 35 minutes every single week. And I remember talking to Michael Giacchino early in his television career, and I said, "How do you write 35 minutes in a week? How do you do it?" And he said to me something I never forgot, which was, "Your first instinct is typically and almost always your best instinct."
Hmm.
And I thought that makes sense to me because, if you take too much time,
Yeah.
you'll end up screwing it up somehow. You're just gonna overthink it.
Overthink it, yeah.
Yeah. And I think it really does pay to really just focus in on what you're seeing, and just you can almost hear it in your head what it's supposed to be. At least for me. And I like
so
to go with that.
one side of the coin is Cold War. The other side is we're in the 80s, and not only are we in the 80s, like we're in like the throes of 80s synthesizer music.
Oh, yeah.
And to me, like, what a great opportunity. Are you a synth guy? Do you own synths? Like, what does your studio look like?
I'm not a synth guy.
Okay.
I appreciate very much the time and wasted time
Yeah.
that I might put into something like that. But all the people that I know who have them and collect them, that is commitment.
Full-time job, yeah.
Yeah, for me, I just I'm inspired by getting sounds quickly and being able to really tweak them. And I think those two things are really tough when you're dealing with real synthesizers. That said, I do own a Moog Sub 37, which I use quite a bit. So, and I've learned how to use it, but it's tough to automate it. So I have to record it. Once I have it, I just record it because I never know if that's the tough thing about old synths, right? And that's not even an old synth; it's just a Moog synth. But
Yeah.
When you have your sound, you better capture it right then because they, depending on the temperature of the room,
Right,
all kinds of stuff could happen to them. So, my thing is speed and ease of tweaking, and I love. I use a lot of the Arturia stuff. I use
Okay, great. That was the
the Yuhi stuff. The soft synths from Diva and Zebra HZ. Those HZ filters are far superior in my opinion, but I don't want to get too far in the weeds on the tech stuff. But
I love the weeds though. That's good because like you look at the CS80. It's not a small it's not going to fit on your desk. Like it's like a foot. It's a huge,
ginormous.
Yes.
My friend Jeff Rona has all those, and it's like, whoa, man, they're huge. You see just pictures of them in the soft synth, but the reality is they're very, very large. The Moog modular is really fun to work with. That's where I wrote the Bell's theme on that one. I was just playing with the sequence, the sequence pitches randomly. I was doing random. Okay, I'm going to do this. Blah, blah, blah,
That's the only way you can do it, really. Yeah, there's no intention usually.
That's true, yeah. But I was just playing with it, and I did a whole bunch of stuff, and then I came up with that one.
It's a great line.
It's so fun, It's just like a great thing, and that in itself is a spoiler, so I can't even talk about why that's good.
It's all right. So you said, let's see, the Moog modular, the Mini Moog, the CS80. What other things are in your arsenal of soft synths, or just kind of at your disposal when you're in the writing process?
My template is like 800 tracks or more, probably more at this point. But it's just a lot of. Of course, all the standards like the Spectrasonic stuff, Omnisphere, Omnisphere is a beast. It always will be. It's just a great synth. I use it all the time. I've been away from it for a little while because I've been traveling, so I'm trying to picture it in my head. But there's just a lot of great other synths that I use that are, just sort of one-offs, and I can't remember any of them right now. I'm sorry. That's terrible. But
no, that's all right.
That's typical for me.
What program do you write in usually?
Cubase.
Okay. And you've been a Cubase guy through and through for forever?
No, I started in 2013 when I started doing TV with Trevor Morris, and I was just trying to copy his situation to do TV shows and stuff like that. But But I do love it.
Yeah.
I think it sounds great. It's just easy to use for me. It's musically intuitive. Before that, I was on Logic. Before that, I was
Okay.
on Digital Performer. Before that, I was on Studio Vision. So I've used a bunch of them. But I really love Cubase at this point.
Mm. So what aspects of this project, separates from, I mean, like, obviously this is Cold War, the time and place, and I mean, because this project, it takes you, it's East Berlin, Vietnam, Turkey, Soviet, KGB headquarters. There's a handful. Like I like the little hint of the Turkey theme, like when you drop in, you're like, oh, we're in Turkey now, like the little line that you put together. But what are the things, like when you kind of see the large scale of the storyline, at least when it comes to the campaign stuff, to you is like exciting because you haven't had a chance to dabble in some of those different countries and backgrounds and stuff.
Yeah, like I said before, I'm really inspired by the level itself and what Treyarch has done. So that's a big consideration. But overall, our sort of brief that we came up with early on was, let's do 80s music, but modernize it. Because I mean, if you don't modernize it, you end up, everything sounds like Stranger Things at this point, right? So
okay. I didn't want to say, but you said it, which is fine. I mean, that's the only recent touch point that people will have to 80s. It's like 80s has been very popular for a very long time, but yes,
right.
It came back.
It came back. Well, back when I did Mass Effect in 2007, like no one was doing that. So it was like this. It was like, what just happened? So that was kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
And then when Stranger Things came out a few years ago, it was like, wow. They did such a great job on the theme, and
Sure.
I love that show, that score.
Yeah.
It was so perfect, and it's like, why mess with perfection? I'm not trying to copy them. So as a matter of fact, I think some people at Electronic Arts thought that they had copied me, and they were looking. Nice. They were hiring musicologists to see if they copied me, and I told them, I said, no, they didn't copy me, man. That's not me. They're not doing what I did. They're doing something.
It's a similar instrument, but maybe that's it.
Yeah, it sounds similar, but it really is really not the same.
Yeah, I mean,
and the musicologists came to the same conclusion too, so that was all wrapped up pretty nicely.
But if you're on a synth, it's going to sound like that synth. You can't get away from the sound. I mean, you can bend it and twist it, but yeah, that's what you want. You want to hone in on the synth sound, which you've done. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember like my sister calling me many years ago and saying, "Oh my God, I think somebody ripped your music off from Miss 3." I'm like,
no.
Really?
Yeah.
So she sends me a link or whatever it was. She sent me like, oh, I saw it here. Check it out. I listened to it. It was just a big orchestra with a choir. It had nothing to do with Miss 3 at all. It's just so it's funny when people, they hear things.
The untrained ear.
Attribute. They attribute it. Well, even the trained ear too. Like what happened with Mass Effect. They were smart about music, and they still were a little bit put off, this sounds a little bit too similar. But so cut to doing the beginning of Cold War, and Brian too, he's the audio director at Treyarch, and I were talking, and he said, I think it would be really cool to do synth, almost like synthwave, if you could think about that in score form, but make it modern, So like I think you start to hear some of that kind of thing in like the first 4 tracks of the soundtrack.
Rising. I mean, you get into I think Rising Tide.
Rising Tide, that's a synthwave track, but modern. It's not like, it doesn't really sound like an 80s track, right? I worked with Jimmy Henson again. He did Adrenaline and Inferno with me, and we came back to do Rising Tide because we always do the multiplayer themes together because he's really killer with synth, and I like to work on it with him.
Yeah, I want to talk about that next, just about the other aspects of the Call of Duty game, which is not only that, but you have multiplayer and you have zombies, which you have like a whole nother career just with the zombie aspect of these games, which to me is like, there's people who only like, I've seen people who only play zombie mode, like that's like their life in the Call of Duty world, which is fine. There's plenty to do there. It's a lot of fun, but Yeah, I mean, when you mentioned obviously interacting and collaborating with the audio team, how much feedback do you have with the rest of the studio? Like, who are your touch points at the studio that are informing you of, you know, what you're doing well and what they might need more of?
Okay, so everything flows through Brian Toohey, who's the audio director. And one of the things I love about working with Brian is he is the gatekeeper, I think. Because, you know, on a big title like this, you have a lot of opinions and stuff like that. But and people want to be heard in terms of what the music is supposed to be. But Brian is, you know, he holds everyone at bay so that I can just be creative, which is really a nice thing. You know, and he ends up being like the main decision maker. And, you know, as a result, and he just trusts me. And once we are on our way, like, I am almost free to do whatever I want to do. And I keep getting good reviews from the people at the top at Treyarch and Activision, who you know, don't have any problem with what I'm doing. So, and they keep giving me crazy things to do, like, you know, not so much on this particular game, but like, you know, doing big band stuff for zombies and writing songs and you know, they just like, who's going to do it? And Brian will be like, oh, Jack will do it. So I end up getting these great opportunities to do things I wouldn't normally get to do. And it's just really fun. I remember in Black Ops 4, they sent me a video at the very end. I think we had like 3 weeks or something until we were locked out of the game. And they sent me a video with this sort of 1960s kind of jazzy thing from like Batman back then. Okay. The Batman movie. Yeah. And I was like, well, what do they want me to do with this? And he goes, I don't know. Let me find out. And he comes back and he said, well, they want you to do your big band thing. I said, well, we've already recorded. I have no more budget. Do they want to, like, but then I said, you know, I'm actually pretty frugal with the budget. I think I can make this work.
Oh my God.
And so in like 2 days, I sent back a finished mock-up of what it would be. And then we were supposed to, then it's like, oh, can you also do a bunch of jingles for the Perseus thing? And I was like, okay. So it was like, okay, I'm going to do a whole session of big band again. And so we put one together really fast, and we wrote all these jingles. I pulled in some other writers to help me write the jingles, Cindy and her brother Rob, who's like his voice is ridiculous. He's a voiceover guy, but he's a singer as well. And so we put this together, brought in another friend of ours, Vanjie Gunn, who's a singer, and we just went into the studio and recorded, I think it was like 6 jingles and this one tune for the cinematic that was the 60s animated thing. And that was This Jazz Is Classified, that on this Black Ops 4 soundtrack, which is like, that was like one of the best pieces of music. I wrote it in like a day and a half too. It was just came out great. I was really happy with that. Very, very fun style of music to write.
So when did you guys ship your Gold Master, or when was that? When were you locked out of this one?
Let's see. I'm gonna say. We just got a call over there. Sorry.
No worries.
I'm going to say, well, we recorded in beginning of September. I had everything mixed by mid-September. Wow. I'm going to say October 15th we're truly out. But I mean, we were done. I was done delivering everything a little bit before that. Okay. I think. Yeah. And then I worked on the soundtrack for like a month.
I was going to say, because the soundtrack released in of itself. Did they already release the soundtrack? Has this been released?
It came out the day the game came out on.
It did. Okay, cool.
13th, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's 51 tracks here. I mean, how much material do you think it was?
It was a little over 2 hours. A little over 2 hours on the soundtrack.
It's incredible. It's so cool. To me, it just shows how much these games rely on not only just, I mean, the soundtrack. I mean, it's the tension and the moments. I mean, the sound design in terms of, obviously, like the sound team, we can't forget their contributions. But you know, when it comes to these games, you treat it as if it was like a feature film, like the tension moments, the quiet moments, the bombastic moments. Yeah. You know, it's really riding on on that. I mean, I can't play this stuff too loud in my house because it sounds like there literally is a war zone in my house. Like that's
Yeah.
that's like the old trope
Yeah.
about these games is like
Yeah.
the cops will like show up at your house, make sure everything's okay.
That's right.
But
Yeah. Got to put headphones on or something. Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, like when you are working on the stuff, you're delivering for a 5.1. What are you writing for? Is it stereo? What are you delivering them?
Yeah, most of the in-game stuff is stereo at this point. I think next, when we get to the next gen, I mean, this was a next gen
Yeah.
game, so
Yeah.
they did a lot with the audio. But I think next go around, they're going to have enough time so I can do all of the music in 5.1 if I want.
Okay.
But I did, most of the cinematics were done in 5.1 and mixed into 5.1. Yeah, I recorded them that way. And yeah.
Yeah, so I was gonna ask you, where did you record all of your orchestrations then? And I mean, I assume none of it was done in person, or how'd you go about that?
No, actually, it was done in Nashville, and at that time, Nashville was not in lockdown. I just got lucky. I got lucky, honestly.
Okay.
So what they did was they were still very careful. So we just did sessions separately. We did the strings together, but they were separate. I think there was only one person per stand instead of two.
Right, yeah.
And they separated them a little bit more, and then everybody wore a mask.
Okay.
And then when we did the brass, we did those just by themselves. I think we had 17 brass or something. And then they would be in their own cubicles, kind of blowing away from each other because you can't wear a mask and play.
Yeah.
So they did that. And then same with woodwinds. We did those separately too.
Okay. And so when you have your recordings, do you yourself work with an editor or a mixer? Like, what's your team look like once you get out of the record phase?
So, I worked with two mixers, Jason LaRocca and Phil McGowan. Jason works with an editor, so that editor would take all the tracks and put them together, and especially with the all the many tracks, because we did 2 passes for 32 singers, so that was 64 separate tracks of singing, and he would clean all the tracks up and balance everything in a rough way for Jason, the mixer. And then when I worked with Phil, he did the same thing, but he does it all himself. I don't know, Phil's just like he has like octopus hands or something. I don't know. So yeah, we did it like that, and so there's a bit of building to do when you do it so separate like that, but that's pretty typical in any film score and game score these days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at what point are you able to walk away and feel good about knowing that, like, do you get those phone calls at a certain point late at night that they're still needing stuff, or is it pretty well hashed out and everything's been spotted at a certain point that you guys, I mean, like you shared the story about them coming back to you with big band stuff, but like, was that the case with this also with zombies or with the Warzone aspect of the game?
No, that was the worst. Not even worst. It was really fun, but that was probably the most down to the wire thing I had to do for them. Usually, this is what I love about working with Treyarch. They complain a lot internally about how everything is rushed and everything, but they're actually so together when it comes to making these games. I mean, they always want 3 more weeks of tweak, right?
Yeah.
Before the game even gets released. But the reality is that their work is pretty stellar, and they can tweak after the game's launch now because everything's downloadable patches and stuff. But for the audio, like, we plan way ahead in advance about what's needed, and we make sure it gets done. My team is amazing. We get stuff done when it's due, and not a day later, and that's how I run my ship. It's never going to be late. As long as I have enough time, notice, it's not going to be late. So, I don't have those things where I'm going through a committee of people trying to dissect what I've done and tear it apart. Like, it's just, they just have trust in me to get it done. And, that's a real amazing thing, really, as a composer, because I don't think a lot of composers always have that situation. It's like, people care about music, and when they care, they want to put their stamp on it, and that's a tough thing to write in a committee kind of situation, because then you do have to do a lot of revisions and changes. And I'm not saying it doesn't get better, because I actually like getting notes and like making changes because it shows me that they care. And generally speaking, if I get more time on a track, it's going to get better. It's not going to get worse. So I don't mind that at all.
Yeah.
And they always feel guilty asking for changes. I'm like, please don't do that. Don't feel guilty. It's okay. Really, it's okay. It's only going to get better. So we have a good time with that. And like I have methods of working in games that I don't know how many other people work this way, but I'm sure I'm not the only one who does this, but pretty early on, once we record, I have an editor take everything apart and take all the stems apart and make little blocks of music that can be used later on if we need something, right? Mm-hmm. So, let's say that I've got a main theme, right? And I've got, pads, strings, brass, woodwinds, synthesizers, percussion, all these different stems, right? I'll have somebody create new pieces of music using different combinations of those stems and put it in a library. So what we did on this one, because we were working with Raven. Raven is the studio that was mostly responsible for doing the single player. And I was working through Brian Toohey, but with the designers at Raven. So I just published on Slack, like all this massive library and kept adding to it as we went along. And so when it came time to the end, and this is typical of every game, all the cinematics come in late, right? They come in, 2 weeks
Final
before
renders,
they're locked out or something. Yeah, it's just like crazy. And so, I try to score as many of the important cinematics as I can, anything that's like an opening cinematic or a longer cinematic, I score it custom. But then we go through this process. I'll have a team of 3 or 4 editors who will take all these movies and I'll assign these movies to these guys. And these guys are really good editors. And they put together what sounds like, they Frankenstein together these edits, and it sounds like custom score. And then I go through a process of going back and forth with them to make it exactly the way I want it, as if I wrote the music for it. And that turns out really good. But this time, the people at Raven just did it internally, and then they would send me some stuff. And I was like, yeah, this is great. What you're doing is great. Keep doing it, So they were very helpful to get like all the smaller interstitial kind of cinematics that serve as transitions through the game to make it all flow and have the right vibe. So it was a really fun process doing that. So, that essentially turns, 2.5 hours of music I've written into like many more hours of music,
Yeah. That's awesome. Do you feel like you'd hinted at, obviously, like this came out right as PlayStation 5 and the new Xbox console was released. Did that make any change? Were there any other considerations then? But not really, you're saying?
Not for me, because my only thing was to deliver stereo, except for the big cinematics that were going to be pre-rendered, which are all in 5.1. But I saw what it did to the audio team. Because, it was a lot of new technology coming in. And it was really awesome technology, but it was complex and it was tough to implement, and they had a lot of work technically and engineering wise to do to make it work. But I think they're pretty happy with it.
Yeah, it's always the titles that are first out with new console releases are going to be the ones that people are going to gravitate towards for many reasons, but just also because it's going to have the new tech and new graphics, hopefully new audio engines. I'm excited to kind of see where these new platforms. It's kind of funny to look back at the old Xbox and PlayStation, and even PCs continue to evolve, but just looking at those consoles, how much new tech from the last ones to now is crammed into these boxes, and it's a full-blown computer in there, and it's exciting because I don't think you're not going to be allocated too much space, hopefully, of storage. Like the downloads are pretty incredible of how big these games are.
Yeah, I heard it's like half a gig, right? Just to get the game in there.
Yeah, like probably when it's all said and done, maybe with all the add-ons and stuff. It's kind of a running joke every time a new update or patch comes along. It's like, wait, how big is this? What are we getting with this? And are you? I probably asked you this every time I talk with you, probably, and every video game composer you ask, are you a gamer? And do you have to be a gamer in your mind to understand the mechanics of video game composing?
I think you got to play games to understand how they work. Yeah,
Yeah.
I do. Yeah. I don't play a lot of games because I find that it's just tough for. I actually have like a brain problem with it. Like I get dizzy when I play them, but I do play the ones I work on, and I do it like that.
Yeah.
It's just I'll play with my nephew, once in a while, just to get in there and just for research and stuff like that. But I'm like, I'm like an hour in. I'm like, I'm sorry, dude, I got to stop. He's
Yeah, of
12. He could go all day.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I can't. I'm gonna get sick if I keep playing. So
Are there? Yeah.
yeah,
That's fine.
that's it.
We can't devote our whole lives to being full-time gamers. That would take away from everything else. Are there any other tracks in your mind? I mean, I'm just looking through the track listing here, and there's a bunch that I've pulled out, which I really like. Are there any favorites of yours that kind of challenge you or surprise you of what you're able to kind of do musically?
I was really proud of the track "This Ends Now," which is basically right before the final siege of the game, which I don't think you've gotten to yet. But they're on an aircraft. It's a cinematic on an aircraft carrier, and they're talking through it's sort of like the hero shot of the game, where they're getting ready to launch into the final battle and capture the enemy. Yeah. So and my daughter sings on. That's my daughter, Gracie. Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Okay.
Yeah, she does.
She gets there. She goes there. You get that voice going. You're like, all right, this is the moment. This is that heroic moment.
Yeah, she happened to be home. She studies in London, and she happened to be in LA, and she was leaving the following week back to school, and she's studying acting. So, and very talented person in terms of she could probably be an amazing musician or actor or whatever. That's how she rebels against Cindy and I. She's not a musician, she's an actor, she says, but she's a great musician too. So
you guys have the whole cast and crew right within your household.
Yeah, I know. Right? It's just amazing. Yeah, it's like we're the Von Trapps or something.
Yeah. My God. Yeah, I think like before we start recording, I mentioned I've only played maybe a fraction of the game according to your soundtrack list. I
kind of run it in order too, so it's pretty much in order there. So.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's to me that's the exciting thing because in the game, it's you get dropped into an environment, you have a new set of constraints and characters that you have to kind of persevere through. I love this. Like I don't know over the course of my life how many Call of Duties I've played, but I never seem to get tired of it, and I don't think other people do either. There's so many offerings that these games are now doing, and I just feel like they must be so fun to, I guess, have that relationship with with your role of before the rest of the world has had their chance at it, because I don't know, the experience to me it feels so natural. It feels like you're in it. That's all I can say, which is why I think people love to go back and play these games, because it puts them in that first person perspective, and it's so much fun.
Yeah, I wish that I could figure out how to, because I know the whole game by heart, right?
Yeah.
By the time I'm done. So I wish there was a way for me to erase that memory and then be able to play it fresh and see what I thought. You know what I mean? It's like, that would be kind of a cool trick, but I can't. So no matter what I do, I know what's going to happen next. But
the Cold War, when it comes to Call of Duty, the Call of Duty franchise, just that this style. Are they as meticulous when it comes to their research and like being authentic, or is it like a hyper version of real, of being real, not so real? I guess.
Well, it's funny because like I think they do an enormous amount of research, the writers and the people who put it together. Like the backstories are always really well researched. There's always some fact mixed in with the fiction, just to sort of give it a heightened sense of reality, I think, through the fiction, which I love that about them. I love that about the stories that, Dave Anthony wrote for Black Ops 2, and then 3 and 4 3 was another really fun one. 4 was unique because there was no single player. But there was lots to do for some reason for me, even though there was no single player. I did all the zombies music. I did all that stuff. So that was kind of a fun, different kind of experience. And then Cold War was just like straight up great story, going back to a time when, for some reason for me, like, I don't know, like the fact that it's not called Black Ops 5, right?
Yeah.
Is a huge deal. Like the fact that it's called Black Ops Cold War says to me everything I need to know about what I'm getting into, and I have anticipation built in. It's sort of like what World War II did, right? For the other game, right? Like when that was called World War II, and it was like, oh my God, we're back to that. That's cool. Let's do that.
Yeah.
But Cold War has that sort of similar vibe to me. Like it tells you what it is, and then you realize when you play it, it's so much more than that kind of thing, so it's like a nice, I don't know. I can't really describe why that's cool. It just is.
Absolutely. Well, what is, I mean, this is kind of funny because like this title came to you and like you weren't planning on doing it yet. You were able to create the space and find the time to do it, looking ahead to the future, with the year ahead here. What can you not tell me that you're working on? Because actually, that's not true. Well, what's happening with Mass Effect? Because I heard there's some rumbling that there was Mass Effect re-release, or is that true?
I guess they're remastering the first 3, okay. So the trilogy. So they're just remastering for the new platforms. I wasn't involved at all in any of that. They did ask me for stems at one point, but it's like, guys, that's like 10 and 13 years ago? Like, I don't even own those computers anymore. You know what I mean? That stuff's gone. I mean, I did look for them and I did find some stuff, but I don't think it was useful. So I just do things differently now than I did then. So stems weren't necessarily as plentiful then. But aside from that, like, what am I doing now? Like, right now I'm touring Portugal right now, because it was an opportunity for us to get out of the country for a little while, and because of COVID, and there's not a lot of people clamoring to get a lot of work done, because like half the TV, film, and those kinds of productions are not even happening. They're all in development right now, and there's going to be an explosion next year, and I'm coming back. I'll be back in the country mid-January, and we'll see what's what then. See if we can find a good project to work on. Right now, I'm just happy to not be working.
Oh, that's great. Well,
frankly,
take the time to have a little R&R and travel a little bit. That sounds like great.
Yeah, I like to do that and just freshen up my perspective, and because when I do these games, that's all you think about, And now it's nice to think about something else for a little bit, and I'm already starting to feel the itch. It's only been like a little over a month. It's only been a little over a month, and I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? I got to get back to work. But I'm trying to like just chill a little bit, enjoy.
So I guess for folks who want to stay in touch with you and follow your work, your website's a great place to go. Is it jackwall.com? Is that right?
Jackwall.net.
.net. Okay.
Net. Yeah. Jackwall.com is a company that makes wall jacks.
Those bastards, how dare they?
I don't even think they use it anymore.
Oh my God.
I don't have it, so.
Okay. So jackwall.net, obviously, and where else can people find you? Anywhere else? Social medias?
Facebook, Twitter. Occasionally I hit Instagram.
Okay.
Yeah, any of those places is good. LinkedIn.
Cool. I don't know. It depends how many people you want reaching out to you, asking you for jobs, but or maybe they can find you for a job. That's actually the other way around.
There you go.
Well, Jack, thank you so much for taking the time to chat about this game. It's so exciting just to see once again what you're revisiting the Call of Duty world, and I'm excited for people to play the game and hear your music. So thank you so much for chatting.
Thanks, Michael. It's always a pleasure, and thanks for having me.